Hey, my name is David Borma, and from 1993 to 1997, I was a student at Moody Bible Institute. I absolutely loved my time at Moody. I lived in Dreyer too, was a youth ministry major, and I came to Moody with a very clear call on my life. I knew that God was asking me to join him in his mission to reach the next generation. I wanted to be a youth pastor, and so I did everything I could to involve myself in student ministry and the courses that were available at Moody, but there was just a problem. I'm no good at school. Like many of you, you're sitting in these classes and you think, how am I ever going to pass this? By the time my first semester was over, I'm not ashamed to tell you, I had a 1.9% GPA. Needless to say, school was a struggle for me. Truth be told, I never read a book from cover to cover until I was in a class like you, my freshman year at Moody. Says a lot about the public school system, but needless to say, I struggled. After that first semester, there was a come to Jesus moment, and the administration said, if you want to stay here, you need to get your grades up. I walked across LaSalle Boulevard and I took a picture of Curl Hall, much like this one. And I pinned it on my desk, on my bulletin board on my desk, because I knew that there was a day coming where all I had to do was get through this arch. All I had to do was hold on long enough and get grades that were good enough to get me to the point where I could walk through that arch and pursue what God had for me. I just had a long way to go between my freshman year and the day that I walked through that arch. And I needed a tangible reminder of the call that God had put on my life beyond that arch. But I also needed to be reminded what I needed to do between that moment and graduation. I needed to be reminded of what God was asking me to do on campus there at Moody as a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior to prepare me for ministry beyond Moody. Regardless of the grades I got in the classes, I learned a ton, and Moody was formative for me as I stepped into full-time ministry beyond graduation. One of the frustrating things for me as a Moody student were these required courses. I think you're sitting in one of them right now. It just didn't make sense to me why I needed to take all these classes that had nothing to do with student ministry. Why do I need to take this course? How is this going to help me? I'm not a missions major. I'm not an intercultural studies major. Why do I need to take this course? Side note, I have a junior in high school right now who's asking me why he needs to take geometry and algebra. So fast forward from my freshman year on campus at Moody to my very first summer being a youth pastor. For 20 years I served as a youth pastor, and that first summer I found myself with about 20 students in the middle of Monterrey, Mexico on a short-term missions trip. Most of the day was spent doing some kind of service project, some tangible physical ministry that was happening there at the mission or with some of the church partners around there. And then every evening our group would pack up and we'd go to the inner city area of Monterrey, Mexico, and we'd do some street performance. And then the people who were around, we would take the opportunity to share our testimony, share the gospel with people. And I just remember sitting on this stone bench that was in the park there. I'm watching my high school students share their faith with people all over this park. And it just hit me, this overwhelming sense of joy hit me that this is what it's about. This is about helping students be disciples who make disciples who make disciples. And this joy was just welling up in me. And I had this thought, this must be the same kind of joy that Jesus had in Luke chapter 10 when the disciples that he sent out on a mission come back full of joy. These disciples who were just astonished at what they were able to do because God was in them and using them in ministry to take the good news to people who needed to hear it. They return and they're full of joy, and Jesus is full of joy because he was able to send them. And I'm sitting on this stone wall thinking, this must be how Jesus must have felt. And then I thought, this must be how the Father feels, just a sliver of how the Father in heaven feels when just one person comes to know Christ. I'm watching my students share the good news of Jesus on a short-term missions trip, overwhelmed with joy. That this is what it's about, that we get to take the gospel from here to the ends of the earth, and the joy and the privilege that goes along with that was just overwhelming at that moment. It was then and there that I began to realize that missions is not just one of the things that the local church offers. It's not like we have student ministry and adult ministry and children's ministry and a worship gathering and the elders and the pastoral staff, and it's all these different things that we have to offer, and then missions is just one of the departments, one of the things that we offer as a church. No. Missions is the point. Missions is the reason the church exists. The reason that we have a church, a local church, is to build up the body, to build up the believer, to equip them for the work of ministry. And that ministry is to take the good news, to take the gospel to the people that need to hear it, to the people that are in our lives right now, and the people who need to hear it that are at the ends of the earth. That is the mission of the church. It's not just that we offer a missions opportunity. The reason the church exists is to propel the gospel from here to everywhere. It never clicked until I was sitting there on that bench in Monterrey, Mexico, watching the church be the church, watching the church fulfill its mission to make more disciples. That these disciples, these young people that I was working with, were being disciples, taking the gospel to other people and helping them be followers of Jesus, who then helped make more followers of Jesus. So I don't know what your major is. I don't know what your ministry goals are. I don't know what you're anticipating beyond the arch. But what I do know is that a leader in the movement of Jesus Christ is responsible to make sure that missions is core. It's essential to whatever ministry you're participating in. So let me encourage you with just a couple of things. One, this course matters. What you're studying right now, getting a foundation, a foundational understanding of missions and the history of missions and what God has been doing all throughout history, is essential for you to then build into the ministry that you're leading a real focus on the mission of Jesus Christ. The second thing I just want to encourage you with and remind you of is that missions is at the very center of God's heart. We see it from Genesis to Revelation. All throughout history, God has been pursuing mankind. We see that every tribe, tongue, and nation will be present at the throne room of God. And in order to make that happen, God sent his only Son on mission to redeem and rescue mankind so that we can be with him for the rest of eternity. Missions is at the heart of God. The third thing I'd say to you is this: not everyone is going to go. Not everyone is going to be a full-time missionary. Not everyone is going to throw their hat into taking the gospel from here to everywhere. But what I would say is that every one of us is responsible to make sure the mission of God continues to go forward. I like to think about it this way. There's got to be at least one of these four things, and maybe multiple of these four things, happening in your life as a follower of Jesus. One is to go. There are some of you who are a part of this course right now who know without a shadow of a doubt that God has called you to go to the ends of the earth, to bring the gospel to people who've never heard it. So let me just say to you this: go. Don't let anything stop you. Pursue the call that God has put on you. The mission is too important for you to bow out because it gets difficult or because there's hurdles in your way. Go for it. Take the gospel to where God is calling you to take it. Then there's the others of us who are not going to be full-time goers. But I would encourage you, if you've never even considered going, to go for a short-term trip. Do something to open your eyes, to broaden your perspective on what God is doing around the world. Take the opportunity right now, while you're in this season of preparation, to get a taste of a couple of different things that God is doing. Go overseas somewhere for a few weeks. Join a missionary and see what their work is like. Prayerfully consider whether God is calling you to go long-term, or if God is calling you to go in short-term stints to help support the full-time goers in the work that they're doing. Friends, there are 3 billion people on this planet who have never heard the good news of Jesus Christ. 3 billion. I know it's hard to get our minds around, so I'll just put it this way. There's 156,000 people a day who die never hearing of the good news of Jesus Christ, never having the hope that they can have their sin forgiven, their relationship with God restored, their life to have hope right now and hope for eternity, their life to have eternal purposes now and for all of eternity. They've never heard that, and there needs to be more goers. People need to hear the good news of Jesus Christ. So if you're thinking about going, do it. For the sake of eternity, for the sake of those who are lost, go. Maybe you're not a goer. but we're all senders. Make it your priority for the rest of your life to be a part of the missions movement by being a sender. One of the most practical, easy ways that you can do that is to support a missionary financially. Every missionary needs support. They need the help of the church. They need the help of other believers who will say, I can't go, but I will send you and I will support your ministry. And I'll tell you this, when you put a couple bucks somewhere, your heart goes there pretty quick. When you invest in the gospel movement around the world, your heart gets connected to that very quickly. And so be a sender. Be someone who is willing to invest in the next generation of missionaries who are going. And I would say this as well. You have a responsibility to mobilize. Part of sending is mobilizing. Part of sending is saying to friends and family members, hey, what do you think about going? Is there an opportunity for you to go? Hey, let's do a short-term trip together to explore what missions might be like for you. And be a mobilizer, someone who brings people together who will then send others out onto the mission field. So you can go, you can send. And the third thing is you can engage. The truth is that God has put a number of people in your life right now who do not know him. What are you doing with those people? Engage with them. Be intentional about your gospel influence in their life. Don't let another day go by, another week go by, another holiday break go by where you're not intentionally sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with those in your life who do not know him. Last but not least, you can pray. Luke 10:2 says, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send more workers into the harvest field. One very simple, easy thing that you can do that is profound is that you can pray that God would be sending more workers to the harvest field. Our team sets an alarm at 10:02 for Luke 10:2, and we just stop and pray and we ask God, would you send more workers into the harvest field? Give us the chance to mobilize more people to send into the harvest field. Let us join you in sending more. We pray earnestly that God would send more workers in the harvest field. That's the whole reason that my team exists, is to send more people into the harvest field. And so one thing that you can do is join us and just pull out your phone right now and set an alarm for 10:02, either AM or PM, night owl or morning person, and spend some time just quickly praying, asking God, boldly asking God to send more workers into the harvest field. 20 years after walking through that arch at Moody Bible Institute on graduation day, I never, ever, ever would have thought that I would be a part of a missions organization. I thought for sure that when I was done being a youth pastor, I'd be a senior pastor, an exec pastor. Nah, I don't want anything to do with that. What I want to be a part of is mobilizing the next generation to be gospel influencers from here to everywhere. The next generation of missionaries is too vital to the mission of God. That's why I spend all of my time right now trying to mobilize college students and young adults to consider joining God in his mission, joining God in the harvest field so that we could see more and more people come to know him. My team and I work diligently to provide opportunities for people just like you to take next steps towards the mission field. We help you take the easy next step to determine where God may be calling you to serve for the rest of your life. So we offer 3 weeks to 6 week trips for you to dip your toe in the water with full-time missionaries who are doing long-term work in different countries around the world. Our organization is called Apex Missions. I'd encourage you to check us out on our website or find us on Instagram because we would love the opportunity to come alongside of you to figure out what your next step is towards joining God in the mission field. Friends, there's a day coming where you're going to walk through that arch for the very last time as a student, and you're going to enter into the work world. You're going to enter into the ministry world. And I just want to encourage you, I want to remind you that missions is at the heart of God. He is calling us to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them to obey. That's the call of God in our lives, on every one of us, whether we're full-time in ministry or not, whether we're a missionary or a pastor, whatever you do beyond Moody, I beg you, for the sake of the gospel, make missions central to what you're doing because it's central to the heart of God. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me today. I hope that you have a great end of your semester, whether in person or at home. Know that God has a significant plan, and he is working that plan out, and we have the privilege of being a part of it. Take the gospel from here to everywhere. Be part of the movement of God.